So today we're really tackling something fundamental, this powerful and honestly kind of contradictory idea that seeing is not as simple as having eyes.
Mhm.
It's a truth that you see just woven into the fabric of human storytelling everywhere.
It really is. It's the ultimate mythological trade-off,
Yeah.
and it's one that resonates so deeply, I think, especially when you consider our modern world, just the sheer overload of information.
Right.
For millennia,
Mm.
across cultures that had no contact with each other, the core idea has been the same. True insight, I mean, the kind that pierces through illusion, that
Mhm.
sees causality, that perceives fate, it often requires the dimming
Yeah, the clothes.
or the complete loss of ordinary physical sight.
Right.
Blindness in these huge mythic contexts is almost never just a handicap. It's a threshold.
A threshold. I like that. It's an initiation.
Exactly. An initiation into a higher order of knowledge.
That distinction is so critical. Our source material today is almost like a master map for navigating this whole paradox. We're pulling together threads from four really distinct mythic traditions. We've got Greek, Norse, and European fairy tales. And we're going to use them to examine precisely how they chart this transformative relationship between, just seeing the world and truly seeing into it. The real question is, how do you get wisdom that goes beyond just what's on the surface?
And that's our mission today. We want to extract the specific, detailed paths these stories outline for gaining that genuine, transformative insight. We're looking at four configurations that are really their universal archetypes.
Okay, what are they?
Borrowed sight, sacrificial vision, prophetic vision, and finally, restorative vision. By mapping these out, we can get at the underlying question: what does the most profound knowledge actually cost?
And what part of your current self do you have to either willingly or unwillingly give up to get it?
Exactly. It requires a lot more than just opening your physical eyes a little wider.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the most bizarre and maybe the most philosophically primitive example of sight as this external, unstable thing, the Greek gray.
We have to. We begin with the Grey sisters. And these three figures, Pemfredo, Enyo, and Dino, they are truly ancient. I mean, we're talking primordial deities here.
Older than the gods themselves, right? Older than the whole Olympian pantheon.
Way older. So their very existence speaks to a much earlier, almost, a more fundamental understanding of what sight and knowledge even are.
And the core mechanism here is what makes them so fascinating, but also so
So-
unsettlingly awkward. They're a triad of three sisters, but they share a single eye.
And a single tooth, which is just an extra layer of weirdness.
Right, but the eye is the key. They literally have to pass this one eye from hand to hand just to get a moment of individual perception.
And the logistics of that, of the sharing, are so important to their meaning. I mean, can you imagine the clumsiness, the frantic need for cooperation?
It sounds like a terrible system.
It is. These are beings who supposedly hold profound cosmic knowledge, maybe the original memory of the universe itself. Yet each one of them is fundamentally blind the moment that shared eye isn't clenched in her own hand.
So even when one of them has it, the vision is what? It's not perfect.
No, it's universally described as partial, fleeting, and uncertain. It's a borrowed, momentary gift.
Which means their vision is fundamentally precarious. It's so easily interrupted and it's completely externalized.
Yes.
It's not innate. It's just that a piece of equipment they have to get from a sister.
Exactly. And that dynamic just perfectly illuminates this idea that knowledge without personal ownership is, well, it's fragile, it's precarious.
Because it's not part of them.
It isn't integrated into their being or their identity or their soul. It is merely an object, a movable tool. They're perpetually dependent on this external device and, maybe more importantly, on the continued cooperation and goodwill of the other two sisters just to see the world.
And what happens if that triad breaks down? If they get into an argument about whose turn it is or one sister is slow to pass the eye.
Their entire system of collective knowledge just fails. It really sounds like a warning about knowledge that's held collectively but has to be metabolized individually.
Which makes it a powerful mythological warning, right? Against
What-
the dangers of non-integrated information.
It really is. Their shared eye, it acts like a communal text or a bureaucratic archive or maybe a fleeting oracle. It's great for consultation, sure. It's probably necessary for them to maintain their ancient awareness.
But it's never really theirs.
The information they get from it is never transformative because the vision is not internalized. It doesn't trigger a change in the self. It just remains an external data feed.
And we see the catastrophic consequence of this externalization in the story of Perseus, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Perseus, our hero, he's tasked with killing Medusa, and he needs their ancient knowledge to find her.
But he doesn't fight them.
He doesn't need to. He's clever. He just exploits their system. He watches, he waits for that exact crucial moment when the eye is in transit
The handoff.
between the sisters. He snatches it mid-pass, and in that one instant, he holds their collective sight hostage.
And when he does that, they aren't just inconvenienced. They are rendered utterly existentially helpless.
Completely. They cease to function as beings of power.
They lose everything.
They lose access to the past, the present, and the future, all in an instant. The myth shows us that the gray embody the limits of unassimilated information.
Oh, love that phrase.
They have all the data, the capability of seeing, but because it hasn't passed through that, that crucible of inner understanding, it's so easily lost. And when that external source is stolen or fails,
They have nothing left.
they have no internal resources, no imagination, no memory, no inner sight to fall back on. They revert to darkness.
That connection to the modern world is actually incredibly chilling. We live in an age that is defined by borrowed opinions, by instant social media feeds, by information ecosystems that feel collaborative, but are ultimately external to us.
Well, think about the reliance on a specific newsfeed, or the instant consensus you see in an online echo chamber,
Right.
or just any information that is constantly consulted but never really integrated into core beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
If we haven't internalized the vision, if we haven't made the knowledge our own, tested it, and allowed it to actually change our worldview,
Basically the gray.
we're powerful only as long as that shared mechanism is working, and we're utterly helpless when the external source is stolen or manipulated or just fails.
So the gray myth is really a cautionary tale. It's urging you, the listener, to move beyond just consulting information and toward internalization, ownership, and intrinsic knowledge.
It warns against confusing data availability with true wisdom. Wisdom requires that the sight be internal. And that very necessity, well, that leads us directly to our next figure.
Mhm.
Someone who understood that to make knowledge truly internal, a tremendous personal sacrifice has to be made.
Okay, so let's shift gears entirely. We're moving from that precarious, externalized Greek sight to the profound Norse act of definitive self-sacrifice. Odin, the Allfather.
Yes, where the Greeks struggled with their fragile shared knowledge, Odin. He just opts for a willful, deliberate, and painful exchange. This is the archetype of sacrificial vision.
It's the moment when the highest god decides that the price of surface reality is just too high compared to the value of deep cosmic truth.
Right.
I think the mythological weight of this story comes from how starkly transactional it is. Odin, the highest of the Aesir, the leader of the gods, he goes to Mimir's well,
The ultimate source of wisdom, right at the root of Yggdrasil, the world tree.
and the price demanded is one of his eyes. It's not an accident, it's not a punishment, it's a cold, hard, self-imposed bargain for wisdom.
It is the absolute definition of a willed self-blinding. And what it does is it establishes for all of Norse cosmology this mythic truth that knowledge costs something deeply personal.
To get access to that primal ancestral memory and the truths held in the depths of Mimir's well, he has to make an offering that is equal in weight and prominence.
Equal to the profundity of the request. So he offers a piece of his body, a core faculty of his being, in exchange for clarity of mind.
But the duality here is so important. He loses one eye, not both. So the sacrifice is partial, but it's also a permanent mark of his commitment. He keeps one eye.
And that partiality, that's what defines his entire transformation. It defines his identity as the Allfather from that moment on. The analysis of this myth is very clear. The eye he loses is the one that sees the outer world.
The immediate stuff, surface reality, political squabbles, the superficial concerns that occupy mortals and, lesser gods.
All of that. And the eye he retains.
What happens to that one?
That eye, having witnessed this incredible sacrifice, is now dedicated to the inner world.
So the realms of ancestral memory, deep magic, the flow of destiny, ultimate fate.
All of it. He becomes the god who governs between realms. He's the wise wanderer, his physical gaze forever divided. That one-eyed look is a constant state of dual vision. He's always seeing the mundane world, but alongside it, he sees the shadow of destiny.
The missing eye, then, isn't just a deficiency. It's a profound declaration. The source material calls it a wound worn as a badge.
It is the badge of initiation. It's a visible sign of his priorities. It shows everyone that he has definitively renounced superficial vision in favor of absolute depth.
So the mythic truth is that profound insight demands a real renunciation of surface vision or comfort or certainty.
That's it, what is surrendered outwardly. The immediate physical vision that returns inwardly in a much, much more potent form. The ability to perceive fate itself.
Let's push this into the practical consequences. Okay, so Odin gains knowledge of Ragnarok, the ultimate catastrophic end of the world and the gods. How does knowing that inevitable fatalistic conclusion change his day-to-day role?
Ah, that's the complex burden, isn't it?
Yeah.
The knowledge he gets from Mimir's well is not just data, it's fatalistic certainty. The vision of the outer world that he lost, that was the vision of immediate possibility, of short-term tactical gain.
But the vision he gained.
A vision he gained is the strategic, long-term certainty of the final loss.
So he spends his entire reign as king of the gods ruling not towards some ultimate victory, but towards managing the inevitable defeat.
Exactly. His wisdom is the tragic awareness of limits.
Yeah.
He uses his knowledge not to prevent Ragnarok because he knows that's impossible, but to prepare for it, to mitigate the suffering, and to ensure that the subsequent rebirth of the world is possible.
Wow.
The missing eye is the visual sign that he has surrendered the delusion of eternal victory. And this makes his leadership so much deeper and more melancholic than any other gods.
This is such a stark contrast with the Greys. They lose their sight and they become helpless. They have no resources. Odin surrenders his sight and becomes the All-Father, the wisest of all beings. His insight is owned because it was paid for, and it commits him to suffering.
Absolutely. The knowledge he gains is not a mere privilege. It's a profound, life-defining burden. The insight obliges him to lead, to suffer the weight of what he knows, and to constantly seek more information. It's why he does things like hang himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights.
The search never ends.
It can't. The one eye ensures that he can never become arrogant or satisfied. He is eternally marked by the price of that knowledge.
So the lesson here for us, for you listening, is that if you want a true depth of understanding, a wisdom that actually changes how you act, you often have to willingly give up comfort or certainty or the superficial parts of your identity.
The superficial eye had to go for the deep inner eye to awaken.
That is a heavy lesson.
It's an existential commitment. It requires a form of self-wounding that ultimately elevates the seeker.
Okay, so we're moving now from a voluntary sacrifice to a compulsory initiation. Let's turn back to Greece and look at a figure whose loss of sight was forced on him, but resulted in this ultimate uncomfortable truth. The prophet Tiresias.
Tiresias is the ultimate archetype of prophetic vision, and his story contrasts so powerfully with Odin's because, as you said, his loss isn't transactional, it's compulsory. It's an initiation that is thrust upon him by divine forces as a consequence of contact with radical truth.
And the sources give us 2 primary, really fascinating origin stories for his blindness. But both of them center on this explosive, necessary encounter with raw, undeniable truth.
A truth that the physical human eye just cannot process or survive.
Exactly.
The first, and maybe the simpler of the 2 stories, is that he is blinded for glimpsing a goddess. Usually it's Athena, in her naked radiance while she's bathing.
This is a pretty common mythological trope, right?
Oh yeah. The sight of unmediated divinity, of pure, untainted cosmic truth, is just too much for the frail physical senses of a mortal man. The eyes simply burn out, or they're struck closed by the goddess. Maybe it's a punishment for hubris, but ultimately it's just a consequence of exposure.
The physical eyes fail because the vision was too strong, too perfect.
Precisely. They encountered a level of reality they were not built to handle. But the second story, that one is even more complex, and it speaks volumes about the nature of duality and forbidden knowledge.
That's the one with the serpents and the transformation.
Yes. In that version, Tiresias comes across a pair of mating serpents, and he strikes them, killing them.
And this act, this disturbance of the primal duality of nature.
It results in his immediate transformation into a woman. And he lives for 7 years as a woman, experiencing life in its fullness from the female perspective, gaining this deep insight into the internal workings and pains and pleasures of that existence. Then, he's transformed back into a man.
So he gains a perfect dualistic understanding of gender and life experience that no single person could ever possibly possess.
And this monumental life-altering experience, this absolute crossing of fundamental human boundaries, is precisely why he loses his sight. His eyes, having seen and lived through such a radical transformation, have essentially seen too much of the fundamental structure of reality.
The contact with that disruptive truth is what costs him his physical perception.
So in both versions, physical blindness is the consequence. Contact with profound, absolute structural truth is dangerous to the physical senses. The gods have to close the outer eyes because they're now inadequate or just destroyed by the truth they saw.
But then there's the payoff. The closing of the physical eyes opens a channel to the divine.
And unlike Odin, who exchanged one kind of sight for another, Tiresias is compensated with an entirely different powerful faculty: prophecy, longevity that spans generations, and the ability to interpret divine will.
But the physical eyes are never restored.
Never. And that inability to restore his physical sight, that really underscores the nature of the initiation, doesn't it? It means the change is absolute. It is irreversible.
It's the critical distinction. This vision is bestowed. It's a gift earned through suffering and disruption and fundamental transformation, not just the simple transaction.
Right. And his role in myth, from then on, is defined by this sight. He is the voice that speaks necessary, uncomfortable truths to kings, most famously Oedipus, who have perfect physical vision.
But are utterly tragically blind to their own fate.
It's the classic irony. The physically sighted king is existentially blind to the truth of his own parents and his own destiny, while the physically blind seer possesses ultimate, terrifying clarity.
His blindness is a clarification.
It is. The source analysis shows that Odin gains strategic knowledge: how to act, how to win, how to mitigate a coming disaster. But Tiresias gains existential knowledge.
What's the difference?
Existential knowledge is the unavoidable knowledge of what must come to pass, the inescapable truth that clarifies everything, both in the past and the future. He sees fate, and that vision is a defining part of his suffering, because it obligates him to speak truth to power, often at great personal risk.
So the lesson from Tiresias is, it's profound.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes to receive the unseen, the cosmos, or fate, or life, whatever you want to call it, it has to first cleanse or destroy or close the senses that are focused only on the mundane and the immediate. Profound insight erupts from the depths of loss or suffering or being thrust into a terrifying closeness to a truth that your current physical self just can't handle.
It suggests that our resistance to fundamental truth is what keeps our eyes open to illusions. When those eyes are forced closed, we are forced to look inward where destiny resides.
We've talked about primordial triads, the Allfather of the Norse pantheon, and the great Greek prophet. Now, let's bring the scale down entirely to the human moral level and look at European fairy tales, specifically the story of the blind prince from the Rapunzel narrative. This gives us our fourth archetype, restorative vision.
And this narrative offers such a beautiful, grounding contrast to the cosmic stakes of Odin and Tiresias. We leave the realm of divine transactions and forced initiations, and we enter the human world of vulnerability, suffering, and moral consequence.
The prince's blindness is notably different. It's not a divine punishment for hubris. It's not a magical transaction for power.
Yeah.
It's the raw consequence of a human event. He falls from the tower after Rapunzel is banished, and his eyes are blinded by the thorns below. It's painful, it's messy, and it's very, very human.
And that detail, the thorns, is so important. Thorns often symbolize the consequence of rashness or the punishment of the physical body for an emotional or impulsive act. The physical suffering is immediate, and it relates directly to his royal arrogance or his superficiality.
And thrust into darkness, he's forced to wander in the wilderness for years. The purpose of this long suffering is, it feels purely moral and spiritual.
What does that wilderness wandering represent? I mean, it's not just a physical journey, is it?
Not at all. It's the necessary process of shedding his external identity, the identity of prince, the heir, the man of action and privilege. He's forced to learn humility, patience, fidelity, and a depth of feeling that was probably unavailable to him when he lived in courtly comfort.
The source analysis really emphasizes that his darkness is not a mystical condition. It's a moral one.
He is walking in the night through which the soul must pass in order to awaken.
Precisely. His years of wandering in despair and darkness, that's the psychological and spiritual crucible. He is refining his inner self. He learns to hear Rapunzel's voice, to trust his intuition, and to prioritize love and connection over status and comfort. He has to become worthy of sight again.
And the restoration mechanism reflects this deep human transformation perfectly. It's not an oracle, it's not a god, it's not a magical pact.
It's Rapunzel's tears.
Tears of joy and shared suffering that fall onto his eyes when they are finally reunited years later.
This is maybe the most emotionally resonant moment of all the myths we've looked at. Her tears are the symbolic chemistry that completes his transformation. They're the culmination of their mutual suffering and his long, patient searching. It links physical clarity directly to emotional and moral clarity.
So the critical insight here is that his regained vision is not just sight returned, it is sight transformed. He doesn't just go back to being the guy he was before.
No way. The superficial, impulsive prince who was blinded by the thorns is gone. The man whose sight is restored by tears has been completely reshaped by years of humility and darkness.
So his new vision is different.
His regained vision is gentler, more grounded, and profoundly more compassionate because he has suffered deeply and learned patience. He sees the world anew because his inner self has achieved a moral and emotional maturation. He sees human value over royal status.
So if Odin teaches us about existential sacrifice, and Tiresias teaches us the burden of compulsory initiation into truth, the blind prince teaches us that love and endurance and humility are the slow, difficult, but ultimately restorative path to true clarity.
It connects inner growth directly and irrevocably to outer perception. His ability to see the physical world becomes a perfect reflection of his inner transformation. And that completes our mythological map of the four ways sight can be manipulated, lost, or gained in the pursuit of greater understanding.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting because now we can connect these four powerful, distinct archetypes into a cohesive, functional map of insight that we can actually use in our own lives. Let's synthesize these four modes of vision we've gathered.
We've established a fourfold schema for how myth understands the acquisition of sight, and it moves from the most externalized form of knowledge to the most internalized and emotionally integrated form.
First up, we have borrowed vision, exemplified by the gray.
The warning there is crystal clear. Knowledge that stays external to the self-untested, unassimilated information or consensus you've just borrowed from others is fundamentally fragile. It's limited, and it's easily lost when that collective source is compromised.
And it initiates no change in the self. It leaves you perpetually dependent. Second, we have sacrificial vision, the powerful path of Odin.
This is the path of strategic insight. Deep, transformative knowledge requires a willed renunciation. You have to give up an offering of comfort or certainty or a preferred part of your identity. The loss of the outer eye sharpens the inner eye that's focused on fate and strategy.
Third, prophetic vision, which is the destiny of Tiresias.
And this teaches us that blindness can be a necessary compulsory channel. It's a cleansing of the external senses that forces the individual to receive profound, often uncomfortable, unseen, and disruptive existential truth.
And finally, restorative vision, the quiet, arduous journey of the blind prince.
This shows the pathway of the human heart. Through suffering, humility, and endurance, the soul is refined. And when sight returns, it's not just physical acuity. It's an inherently more compassionate and gentle clarity, reflecting moral maturation earned over a long time.
The sources all seem to articulate that these four modes reveal this powerful, unified, ancient intuition across vastly different cultures.
They do.
That vision is not a matter of biological function. It's a matter of initiation. You don't just see in myth, you become able to see.
And that ability has to be earned or surrendered or transformed or redeemed. If we compare the nature of the loss across these four, we find a really fascinating pattern.
Go on.
The gray suffer a robbery. Odin enacts a transaction. Tiresias receives a compulsory consequence from the gods. And the prince suffers a moral consequence that forces him into a period of purification.
None of them just read a book to gain wisdom.
Not a single one.
That distinction, the nature of the sacrifice, that's key. Tiresias, the man, he suffered for humanity's sake, gaining the foresight to warn kings. Odin, the god, sacrificed for a strategic advantage in a cosmic war. The prince suffered for his own refinement and the renewal of his heart. The cost is always proportional to the depth of the knowledge required.
And they all converge on that single powerful insight. True vision is always a metamorphosis, a refashioning of the self. The external equipment, the eye, is secondary.
It's not the eye that changes, it's the one who looks.
That's it. The landscape of your soul has to be profoundly altered before the landscape of the world can be properly perceived.
Let's just revisit those practical lessons one final time, as they relate to our current reality. The Greya warn us against relying solely on the noise of the external world, the information we haven't internalized.
Stop consulting. Start owning.
And Odin hammers home the point that profound wisdom has a high personal price.
Right. If you haven't given something painful up for your current knowledge, you probably haven't acquired anything truly transformative.
And Tiresias teaches us that when you encounter deep, disruptive truth, the kind of truth that upsets your comfort zones, it must fundamentally change how you perceive reality.
If the truth doesn't disrupt your senses, it probably wasn't a deep truth at all.
And finally, the Blind Prince reminds us that the slowest path, the one rooted in patience, humility, and genuine feeling, often leads to the most grounded and highest quality of sight.
The sight of compassion and clarity.
And that ultimately is why these myths persist. They provide a structural framework for understanding not just the ancient world, but our current challenges of information overload and the high cost of genuine, transformative insight.
Hmm.
It makes you realize that perhaps the first step in seeing clearly isn't seeking more data, but deciding what part of your current sight, your current certainty, you need to let go of.
And it brings us right back to that necessary personal commitment, the commitment to vulnerability that Odin and the prince both had to make. Insight is always purchased at the expense of comfortable certainty.
So, as you wrap up this deep dive and think about the challenges or decisions currently facing you, whether they're personal, professional, or existential, we'll leave you with this final provocative thought drawn directly from the sacrificial and restorative modes we explored today. If all true vision is a metamorphosis of the self, what specific form of sight, be it a long-held certainty, a comfortable inherited opinion, or a reliance on external validation that's preventing your inner growth, what might you need to willingly surrender in order to see your current challenge with genuine transformative clarity?
Think about the eye you need to pluck out, or the wilderness you must endure to gain the interview.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into vision, blindness, and the eternal mythic quest for true sight. We'll see you next time.